So thank you everyone for joining us today. I'm Alita from Cherry Health. If you're new to Cherry Lives, these are sessions where we are discussing topics that are interesting and relevant to the healthcare community and ecosystem. They range from everything of physician founders or healthcare practitioners as founders, and innovation, technology, pharmaceutical. Maybe we'll even get into some politics down the road someday, who knows? But these are really just topics that we hope add value to you as a healthcare professional. At the end of the session or after the session this week, you'll receive an email thanking you for joining. If there are any topics that you think that we should cover, we'd love to hear about them. So please just respond to that email and send them over. Today, I am joined by my colleague and one of the co-founders of Cherry Health, Dr. Jordan Vollrath, and by Dr. Richard Sztramko, who is a board-certified geriatrician and internist practicing in Vancouver, and also one of the co-founders of Arya Health. So today, we're going to dig into his journey and talk about Arya and really what they're trying to accomplish and how they're helping to make an impact, and we'll go from there. So thank you both for joining me today. I'm going to kick off really quickly with Richard. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? What got you into medicine and what got you into the crazy journey of entrepreneurship?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it, Alita and Jordan. It's a pleasure to be here, and just the witty banter that was going on before everybody came on live. It's unbelievable. You guys definitely have a fun and exciting company happening. So thank you for hosting me. My journey in medicine, actually. So I became quite ill when I was 15, and I was in the hospital for 2 months. And I had a pediatric surgeon. His name is Mark Walton, and I think he's actually the associate postgrad dean at McMaster. But the guy was incredible, like coming in the room every morning, cracking jokes, also being very professional. Staying late for clinic appointments sometimes when there was mix-ups, like just a very gem, like a real gem of a human being. And just seeing what he did and how he changed people's lives with like a 5 to 10 minute interaction per day. I was like, that's what I want to do with my life. And obviously that evolved. Geriatrics is quite a bit different than pediatric general surgery. But the same thing. So like I found over time, I really liked complexity. I liked, analyzing things a lot. So I went into internal medicine, and then geriatrics just provided like total care. I was like, I was better at kind of psychiatry and better at neurology and then taking care of patients' families as well. So oftentimes as a geriatrician, right, I'm taking care of the 85-year-old, but I'm also taking care of the 60-year-old or 50-year-old adult caregiver. So it's really rewarding that way. And the entrepreneurship journey really happened. And I'm sure Jordan's felt this way. I'm sure most physicians have felt this way. Just the frustration day to day of not being able to control your own workflows, right? There's that feeling that there's got to be a better way. And for me, that was just the technology workflows for electronic health records or inpatient systems. So one of our co-founders, Sam, and I started an inpatient handover app for a little while and realized that hospitals were not a great marketplace for us. And then we transitioned to the outpatient, brought Rich Vandergriend on board, and then launched Arya, which is an end-to-end outpatient electronic health record or clinic management system. So that's kind of where things kicked off.
What a journey. Tell us a little bit about, some of the challenge. You mentioned getting into that entrepreneurship and going down that pathway because of the challenges you've seen, and wanting to try and help smooth out some of those wrinkles and bumps that exist today. But tell us a little bit about that entrepreneurship journey.
Yeah, well, I mean,
how that has been going.
It's been awesome. So having two amazing co-founders has been great. And as you're aware, having like a fun, exciting team that's constantly like evolving and growing, like that's a really rewarding part. But I mean, you're really thrown into the deep end. Like as a physician, you've spent like, 10 or 5 or 12 years getting your training in that discipline, but you don't know anything about shareholder agreements or vesting options or, incorporating in various provinces or paying HST. So all of those things were a big challenge, like, learning how to raise money, learning how to pitch to investors, like it's completely different. So it just takes a while to learn those skills. And I thought it was funny too, though, because like, we went to get a bunch of like MBA student volunteers, and some of them were okay, but some of them were not very good. And a lot of the stuff that I saw in those MBA programs, I was like, that's not the real world that I'm existing in. So it's kind of like a mini MBA in the school of hard knocks.
Yeah.
So it's awesome. It's so fun and exciting. And there's definitely ups and downs to it, but it's a really exciting place to be. And I mean, just the realization, I'm sure Jordan feels this too, is like, you're trying to find locums, and Jordan's probably like, hey, there's a better way to do this. And just the realization that, like, unfortunately, the provincial colleges aren't coming to save you, and the provincial medical associations aren't coming to save you. And many times the hospital admins aren't coming to save you. They don't really care about that, on the ground physician or healthcare provider experience. So like, I think it's really up to us to change the game.
Is that how Sam and other Rich got involved? Like, you guys were working together, experiencing the same kind of frustrations, or how did the team initially even come together?
Yeah, so I was a year ahead of Sam and Rich in residency. So we were all at UBC together. And so obviously you forge really close, tight bonds going through that experience. And then when we got to the other side, Sam and I kind of graduated at the same time. And we started negotiating with electronic medical record companies. And we realized really quickly, we're like, this is really bad. This is a good deal, I guess, but this is the least bad option we have. So let's go with that. And then we started talking with them like, hey, like, can we optimize this? Like, it's taking me 7 clicks to submit a billing. Like, there's got to be a better way to do it. And then just came up against a whole bunch of, like, stonewall or blockades. And so it was pretty frustrating. We're like, oh man. And so you talk to a bunch of vendors and they really weren't interested in like working or improving or making things better. And so that's kind of how things kicked off, is that we were kind of graduating, coming up together. And that's how we knew each other.
And then how far out from grad, like finishing residency, did that all like start coming into fruition?
Well, the handover application that we launched was like right away. Like the first year I was in staff, we were like, let's build this. And we got a buddy, one of my best friends from high school, actually like coded it up. And then we learned how to do the privacy security assessment, and then started launching in hospitals. And, they talk about continuous quality improvement. And so we had all these metrics, right? Like, we were saving people like 2 hours a day in documentation time, because just for context, right? So like, what rounding in a hospital is like, but you've got 25 people on your list. You're handwriting all of these various notes. And then you're supposed to go to like an Excel document or a Word document to like write down all of the issues. So you're doing double the work. So what we did was that we had this issues and plan list and summary that you could just update quickly on a mobile app and online, and then you could just press print. And so it would print your note and you could put it in. And obviously things change and evolve with health information systems, but still, like, it's still up and running in a few hospitals. So cool. That was cool. And we showed the hospital, we save you 2 hours in documentation time. We improve the morale of the physicians on the front line that are practicing, and we make people feel like they're providing more comprehensive care. Yeah. And so, we took that to the CFO, the organization that we were dealing with, and they were like, okay, yeah, let's make this work. But then it went up the line and it was like, wow, you're saving us this time. You're doing all these great things, but maybe we should hire an innovation person. Maybe we need to hire an innovation team to expand the bureaucracy kind of. But anyway, so we kind of pivoted out because we're like, we need to go to physicians directly so that they can decide and they can make their own minds up for what they want, because dealing with people that don't have that pain as decision makers probably won't work out that well for us. So
that's exactly how we structured Cherry too. It's all bottom up, individual physicians, individual clinics, because the bureaucracy, like you're saying, it's just so difficult to actually like cut through the thickness there. And systems change coming from the top down is difficult and slow and conservative. And so that same exact approach of like, let's come up with something for physicians themselves seems to be the path of least resistance.
I agree. There's lots of moving parts.
Yeah.
And I think the risk component that you talked about as well, in a large organization, like people would rather spend $1 billion for an implementation, which we did in BC, like $1 billion or $1.5 billion when everything is all told, than taking a risk on something that's a little bit less well established. And that might make sense for them, but for the physicians on the ground, sometimes it's a bit challenging to take.
Yeah, there's just kind of that disconnect between the administration and the people making the decisions, and then the boots on the ground experiencing the headaches.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you, I spent a few years on that administrative side within one of the largest health authorities, provincial health authorities. And I think, the conservativeness is also there for many reasons, right? It's really daunting to use taxpayer money to try and execute across a large swath of different types of employees, all doing different types of things. So I sympathize and understand the plight of trying to make good decisions, but the time that it needs to happen in, I think we saw during COVID actually that there was a willingness for the first time in a really long time to make decisions more quickly because they had to, and how that can actually help improve outcomes and can improve also physicians' lives of just trying to, and healthcare workers' lives of, sometimes you just have to make decisions that are going to help a bit more quickly. But it is certainly challenging when you're dealing with such large, complex, multifaceted organizations, no doubt. But those primary care physicians, they can get right in there and start trying new things and testing things and being those early adopters, which I think is what we've seen at Cherry is that early adoptership, and then it becomes all of a sudden a little bit smoother and easier to go up the chain as well.
Tell us a little more about that. Or sorry, what were you going to say there? Finish that.
Well, I mean, it's an interesting point though, Alita, so telehealth, for instance, right? Telehealth it's actually, in many ways, it's very low risk, right? When you are dealing with 98% or 99% of physicians that are reasonable and forthright and transparent, right? There was no reason for there to be such a lag. Very excellent telehealth companies were launched in 2011, 2012, and it took 8 years and life or death pandemic to actually get the will to implement video conferencing, and there are challenges with it, but the benefits for many people far outweigh the drawbacks. And so that's one instance where you're there's not very much risk in that situation, but the powers that be or the large bureaucratic institutions were we don't have the will to do this, even though there's massive benefits to it. So it's a challenge for sure.
Oh, exactly. Here in Alberta specifically, there just wasn't telehealth yet because there was no billing code for it. And so that one little change, obviously spurred and brought forward by the pandemic, it's in hindsight, was that difficult or that big of a decision to make? But that was going on for years ahead of that, of just doctors in Alberta, you can't really do telehealth because there's no billing code for it. And these little roadblocks, these little barriers all over the place to that forward progress.
Yeah. It's a challenge. And that's the crux of the people are always well, why is healthcare broken and why is it not moving forward? And it's those issues. It's people can't do a risk analysis. I think that's my kind of perception. It's if there's a really low likelihood of a catastrophic event happening, then I won't move on it, even though the risk of that happening is actually exceptionally low. Do you know what I mean?
And I think there's multiple challenges that they're trying to deal with all the time in these complex organizations, that sometimes layering on more decision-making can seem daunting as well. So they're trying to solve some of the issues that they're seeing right now, worse nurses working overtime, staff shortages, things like that. And those are really complex and, need to be solved as well. And so I think the complexity of trying to solve them in ways that when you're outside of the bureaucracy seem quite obvious, once you're in it, it's the sheer volume of things that they're trying to deal with at any given time can also, I think, muddy decision-making. And hey, when you're tied to politics and those types of budgets, it just adds another layer of complexity in your ability to make those decisions and spend money and make change and potentially ruffle feathers too. But
so true.
Yeah, I'm sure this is a conversation we could have for the next hour of all the challenges. And when you're outside of it, I think it is. But I think what this highlights is the need for those who are practicing to be able to step up, as you were saying, and start trying to create those solutions that are going to help. And I think that's what Jordan and Max at Cherry have done is, hey, there's a problem here in connecting physicians with locums and with jobs and how we do that in this country. And for you all saying, hey, there's a challenge here with the administrative support and the sheer volume of time that it takes to do these tasks. We can simplify this, we can make this better. And so kudos to yourselves. And this is something we always talk about in these Cherry Lives, is that need for other healthcare professionals who know the challenges the best to step up and try and create some of the solutions that are going to impact our healthcare system. And Jordan, you had a question you were going to ask right before we kind of kept going down that path. Do you remember what that was?
Yeah, so I was gonna say, like, so you started out, right out of the gate after residency, going for like the handover app. So like clearly like the innovation in tech and like coming up with new solutions, like pretty much right after graduating was on your radar. What did the timeline look like for Arya? Like in terms of like, okay, this sucks. It takes 6 clicks to actually submit a billing code. There's got to be a better way. Like, how did that actually unfold? When did you guys like first, even come up with the idea, and then how long did it take, and how did that actually come to fruition to create a functional product?
So I think 2018 was when we were first like, well, we've built something now, we've implemented it. I think we could actually, we could build an outpatient electronic health record. And Sam was actually more of the driving force. He was like, this hospital thing isn't moving, man. Like, I've always wanted to build an outpatient EMR. Let's do this. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense. Honestly, like we've been trying pretty hard for a while now. So let's pivot and make this happen. And that's when Rich came on board as well. And then Kent Hawkins, one of our close friends as well, got involved on the marketing side and as an investor. And that's when we started kind of working on that. And I had made some connections to some developers, like a developer shop in Ontario out of Waterloo, as well as like a hosting company, MedStack, which was just launched and kind of up and coming. And so that's kind of the foundation of that. And then, you get some grants, you get some investment money, and you build it out. And then I was stuck in like a larger health authority, so I couldn't use the product, but Sam and Rich started using it right away in their clinics. Mm-hmm. And then after we kind of like tested it out and worked out the kinks, then we kind of put it into market in a limited format, just with kind of close friends, family. And then in 2020, right before the pandemic, we had an official like go-to-market strategy and launch and all of that stuff. And so that's when things started to pick up steam and kind of take off and spread.
And what was that initial go-to-market strategy? I know Kent was like a big part of that. A funny story, I've actually been in Kent's house. We realized this later on. 2 of my med school friends were actually the ones renting his apartment for, I think it was their residency. And I was chatting with Kent just about Arya and everything one day. And then he was saying, yeah, he's got some med students renting a flat down in Gastown or whatever. I was like, I don't suppose it's like Todd and Scott, is it? He's like, oh yeah.
Small world, a very small world.
Like, how did you actually, so you've got a product now, you've got that like 1.0 MVP. How did you actually start getting it out there? What did that look like for those initial days?
Well, we built it predominantly around specialist workflows, just because they're more simple and repetitive than the family practice ones. So we really focused on on specialist physicians in BC to begin with, because we had all the connections to the provincial databases, et cetera. So that was our real kind of setup. And then the other thing is just building that brand trust and brand recognition, because it is electronic health data, right? So people are pretty vigilant, let's say, with how they're going to be sharing their data and what they're going to be doing. So we did a lot of podcasts and blog posts, like as many as we possibly could, just to get the word out there. And then being active on Facebook communities, like posting and responding to questions. And that seemed to kind of get things going over time. And then eventually you kind of roll that into like actually attending conferences once the pandemic was kind of, coming to an end and stuff. But a lot of scrappy, bootstrappy marketing was done. And then different partnerships.
Yeah. I think that's always important. It's a great question, Jordan. It's always important as the, folks that we think are going to be engaging hopefully with these sessions are really thinking themselves about what it takes to get something off the ground. And so, in your experience, you talked about the pretty much MBA by trial by fire, but I'm sure as you were going through this, you got some co-founders, which I think, we've seen are absolutely critical of having that co-founder team, trying not to do it alone because there are just too many blind spots. There's too much for one person typically to try and run all by themselves. But so getting some good co-founders and then reaching out broader to your network. But how else did you find, or where did you go for some of the supports and the knowledge and the wherewithal that you learned in those first few years of how to get this from point A to point B?
I think just meeting mentors in the business community and asking a lot of questions. So we were fortunate that way, in that we had people that had just been serial entrepreneurs that provided a lot of oversight and kind of influence on that side of things. So that was really helpful. And then, the most challenging part really was just finding the technical teams to really build things up, right? We were in a real accelerated market in the tech space. So like a lot of the big players are taking all of the talent. So it's like, where are you finding the tech talent to make this happen? And, one thing we struggled with is we didn't have a technical co-founder, which it wasn't for lack of trying either, right? It's just a bit of a niche market. Like people don't understand healthcare services delivery as well when they're in the tech field. So that was a bit of a challenge. And it took us the longest time to find like the CTO that we loved working with, and he was really on top of everything. So that was a huge relief when we actually found that person.
Yeah, no kidding. And when you guys started in 2018, 19, 2020, going into the pandemic and stuff, that certainly was a very intense time for hiring technical talent and all of those big players scooping up talent. So, it still is challenging, of course, but it's a little bit of a different time now compared to what it was then. How about where you see Arya going next? Tell us a little bit about, what the vision and what the next couple of year or two looks like for Arya.
Yeah. So, we're in 4 different provinces right now. So that's been great, getting the expansion into those different locations. And it's really cool now to see the data that we're getting back on this side. So we've kind of done some A/B testing with some larger specialist clinics. And one clinic that we've been implemented in can see as many patients and has decreased their wait time by about 6 months as another clinic that has twice the administrative capacity and twice the number of doctors. So we have really made a lot of headway in proving our value proposition, which is we're going to make your practice more efficient. You can see patients, and so you can see the same amount of patients in less time and go home and spend time and energy with your family or doing other things you enjoy. Or you could work the same number of hours and increase your billings, by 50%. So for some people, that's a lot of money, right? Potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars for some people. Mm-hmm. So we've built out we've proved our thesis, and we're really excited about that. Really excited to share with people. And so I think we're excited to just continue expanding, right? And providing a good service to physicians. I think that's the other side of it, is you've got a product and you've got the technical side of it, but you're also interfacing with people and a team. And so we really want to provide people with, top-notch service as well, people that they can have fun with. Because as a physician on the front lines, when you're dealing with support staff and they're not responsive and they're not particularly engaging, and you can tell that they don't enjoy their job and they're not coming from a fun team, it just adds to the stress of that interaction. Yeah. So, building that company culture. So I think we've got the product, we've validated that. We've got the data, things are starting to scale a little bit. We've got a really fun, awesome team with great company culture. So it's just, continuing to grow that side of things.
I love that. Tell us, I've met a few different members of your team, and Jordan's met a few. Tell us how you guys have gone about building that team culture, just because, I've met some of them. They do seem to all say the same thing, that the team culture is awesome at Arya. How do you guys go about building that? How do you focus on that?
Well, I mean, you got to have fun, right? You'll have to enjoy what you're doing in life, or what's the point? Like what's the point of spending like thousands of hours on something if you don't enjoy the journey or the ride? And then I think we're a really flat organization. Like obviously we're strong leaders as co-founders, but we really appreciate the feedback and the insights of all members of our team. And we love to like laugh and joke around and have a hilarious time. And then, yeah, just like we're not scared to like push boundaries. I know there's been an evolving kind of movement to like be scared about what you're saying and stuff. And we're not really like that. We just let people have it and have fun. And if you don't like it or if you feel uncomfortable, then let's have an honest conversation about that. But I think that keeps it a little bit more, a little bit more fun on that side of things. The other thing I mentioned, so like, just to get back to the point about the next 2 years. So like we have this core product. It's been great. We've been adding lots of features, but we're really excited about the implementation of various like AI services. I know it's like a buzzword, but it really like in the ambient voice to text, that's a huge game changer. Just being able to chat with a patient and have an AI scribe take that and turn that into usable information. Like it's such a time saver. And it's just going to get better. And then the other things I would say are automated recognition of faxes. Like we're still stuck in the Stone Age that way. But even if faxes are digital and you receive like 30 or 40 pages of, structured text, still means you got to read it. So like, why not have a computer do that, reading the natural language processing to help you read that side of things. And then the last thing would be like optical character recognition. So like, you get those 40 pages of faxes, like automating the computer to do that. So we're a member of the Vector Institute, which is a kind of preeminent AI not-for-profit. It's kind of like a co-government organization. So we've joined that, and we're bringing on some more AI developers. And then we've got Graham Taylor. He's a Canada Research Chair in Artificial Intelligence. He's one of our advisors. And he's one of the leads at the Vector Institute. And so, he's providing lots of insights on how we leverage those things.
Very cool. Very cool. No, it sounds like some good stuff coming out. Same page, like with the new AI tools coming out, like the scribes save so much time. It's incredible. Same thing on like the eFax side of things, like, just sorting these and like all these mundane, repetitive things that happen 1,000 times a day. Like how much time does that save your clinic and your staff?
Yeah.
Oh man.
So that's the thing too. That's been the nice aspect. It's like I don't know if you guys are too young for Hair Club for Men. Have you ever seen any of those commercials at all? Right. So the guy's like sitting there and he's like, not only am I the president, but I'm also a customer. And then it shows that guy and he's like bald before, and you're like, oh, that's cool. Like he's practicing preaches. So like I use Arya in clinic all the time, and I've been able to, spend so much more time actually working on the company because I can see people more effectively and efficiently. But like the other part of it too is like the emotional burden. I don't think people talk about that. Like electronic health records, like they seem like this, like, oh, it's over there. You know what I mean? It's like a data set. It's like a tool, but it's how you interact and care for that patient. It's the only way you can actually care for that patient. Like if you can't order blood work, if you can't, accurately reflect the history of what they're experiencing, you can't do anything without touching it. And so if you have that constant grind of like frustration when you're there, like you're not going to be that happy of a person. And that's why when people are talking about these burnout studies, like why are physicians burnt out? Depends on the study you read, but between 60 and 80% of people are citing their electronic medical record as the number one cause.
Yeah.
I can tell people, hey, like, I'll make you more money. That is true. We'll absolutely make you more money. We'll save you more in administrative time. But I think something that people aren't getting as much is like, you want to feel better? Like, do you want to feel better day to day when you're sitting and looking at something that's beautiful and not something that looks like it was built in 1994 with like Joseph in a Technicolor Dreamcoat, like orange and like pink and all of that stuff? Like it's kind of gross to look at that all day.
Yeah. So, well, and to your point also, it is exhausting. The sheer volume of technology so I think healthcare has been maybe lagging, as we've talked about a little bit, in picking up new technologies and integrating it and doing it well. And now we're seeing a stage in a lot of people's careers where it's just one thing after another, after another, after another. Now you have to use this system when you're in the hospital. And if you're in a clinic, it's this system. I think for the doctors out there locuming right now, it must be absolutely mind-boggling, just the sheer number of systems that they're having to touch and having to try and use. And I think what we've heard as well is they recognize they don't speak to each other. So you get this really quick view that the disparity of how information is flowing with a patient through the systems as well, and a physician's exhaustion of trying to get the information, then track it effectively, use 5 different systems, and manage all that change, because change management is something that sometimes is lacking through this process too. But how do you see, is that something that you see when you talk about this? And how do you see Arya being part of, really helping patients have their information closer to them, so that if they go to a different place, it could be, more easily accessed? How do you see these systems starting to communicate together as well, potentially? Because a million different systems is going to lead to some interesting new challenges too.
And this is where I think the government needs to get out of the way. And there's no reason to not have open API connectivity to various providers. We push and pull data from so many services. It's not hard from a technical point of view. It's not hard from a structured data point of view. It's not hard from a computer processing point of view. So opening up the sources of data, it makes sense to have baseline credentials, right? If you
for security,
let's say you've gone through a SOC 2 audit and all of that stuff, and you can provide that information to people, and you can provide your policies and procedures, that should not take that long. Whereas, for instance, in Ontario, right, you go through the Ontario MD certification process, and you need not only an ISO certification, you also need a privacy impact assessment, an STRA, and they make you put stuff into your health record that they say this is standard and you must have this here, when no specialist ever would require that, and some family doc would never require that. So the administrative burden to to get access to that data has been put in place. It's financially very challenging to do. So I think it's streamlining that process. It doesn't have to be as complicated. And I think it's analogous to the telemedicine situation we were describing before. Yeah. It's not that challenging. It's not that complex. You just need the wherewithal to push forward and make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and so we got a question just from the audience there. And so the question is, would your advice to aspiring physician founders be to follow in your footsteps and sell products directly to primary care physicians, as opposed to building products for hospital systems? And so the reason I throw that in there now is it sounds like, the hospital system route, there's a ton of bureaucracy kind of in the way, but even going the directly B2C route in those, selling to products to individual practitioners, there's still a lot of hassle and headache and hoops to jump through, even though you're now just in terms of credentialing and in terms of regulatory rules and regulations. So I don't know, what would you say to that question then?
I think it would be product dependent, and how so one would be the product and how closely aligned that product is with the key performance indicators that the hospital is looking to achieve, right? Yep. So kind of, we talked about this before. So if you don't have a couple of customers, I think, or close connections to validate in a hospital setting, it's extremely challenging. The other side of it is usually to build something that would interact well with a hospital system would be a fair amount of money. So you're looking to if you're not going to be good at raising a lot of money, or you don't have somebody that's experienced in that, then that would make it a little bit more challenging. So I would say it depends. And so, yeah.
Well, and I think also with the hospitals, depending on the province, they're all different, but they do function as part of a larger entity in Canada. And so the approval process and everything that you have to go through in order to get into a hospital, let alone multiple hospitals, is also just more rigorous. This is a word we could use. Yeah. Rigorous and tedious, versus when you're, I think what Jordan's getting at too is the challenge of being able to go to market in the healthcare space at all is extremely challenging. And it's something we talk about all the time, and how Cherry Health can be a connector in some ways, and what other channels are there out there to help with that. But yeah, when you go directly to the clinics, they are run by an individual versus the larger entities. So that can be easier, but there are also lots of them and they are much smaller. And so it's a step-by-step game versus, that bigger entity. But I think it does depend on what that those KPIs are and what that actual product market fit is to those two different entities.
And one thing too that's been a blessing for us, and a challenge, is that we're in the core physician or healthcare provider workflow game, which means that when we tried to launch into a system, there was too much overlap with the health information system. So that's people want to get the Cerners or the Epics or the Meditechs, and they want to de-risk, kind of getting back to what we were describing. They don't want to take on risk. That's fair, totally fine. But we had too much overlap with the core health information system. Whereas a company, let's say Hypercare, right? They do on-call scheduling, tracking, secure messaging, and all of that stuff. So that's adjacent to, right? So that's a huge value proposition where they're not going to get in the organization's way. So I think if you're going to be launching in the hospital space, it has to you have to consider getting just outside of that core health information system game and somehow getting access to those other systems, because people have done it like Hypercare successfully,
Yeah. And we also see, and I know every province is different. I'll speak to Alberta, for example, because it is notoriously challenging to get into the Alberta health, AHS under that umbrella, because it is so huge. But there are provincial programs and incubators and accelerators that are trying to help speed along that access and that product market fit. I think they're different when it comes to technology versus kind of the deep tech and research and pharmaceuticals and things like that. But, depending what your product is and what you're trying to create, there's definitely some pipelines that you can find that might help get that access into the larger systems if it can be implemented in, maybe a test case and in a control group and then rolled out to the broader sphere. So I would say to this person as well to look into your particular province and what some of those accelerators and incubators within the healthcare space are, because they can be very, very valuable resources and supports in figuring out how to tackle the system properly as well.
Have there been any key contacts or connections or networking pieces that have really led to taking things to the next level, or even in smaller kind of stepwise fashion over the years?
It's weird because I always when I reflect back on some of the connections that have really taken things to the next level, you don't know when they're going to come about, and you could meet somebody and the thing that takes them to the next level could happen 2 years later. So I remember I was at the Collision conference, maybe 2019, and we hadn't formally launched yet, but I met somebody at some random consulate dinner, the Canadian consulate in New York put on some dinner, and I met this guy and his partner, and they were, doing this other separate business, and he ended up providing tons of amazing technical advice and putting us in contact with two of the developers who are with us to this day. But that didn't happen until a year and a half later. Do you know what I mean? So it's hard to say, you get tired of meeting and networking sometimes, but you just got to keep at it and keep doing it. And then there's some key people that I met in the investment world that really, connected with a lot of investors and facilitated and moved things forward and pushed for us. So that was extremely helpful, right? Having a warm introduction to an angel investor versus just showing up or going to a lot of the angel networks now are highly formalized and they're challenging to get through sometimes. So it was nice just having a warm introduction from people that are very familiar with that investment space and know the layout or the lay of the land.
Well, that's an interesting segue too. You mentioned collision as, an opportunity where you met with some folks and it potentially had a bit more of that technical flavor to it with who you met from that interaction. But there was another question from someone in the audience asking how you met your CTO, and are there any channels you'd recommend for meeting technical folks who are interested in healthcare?
That's a great question, because we posted lots and lots of jobs on various job boards and on LinkedIn. So I think that's always helpful. But honestly, it was just the networking, like meeting as many like developers as you can, asking for introductions. When there was the big tech layoff, like we were actively on those. Shopify, the bigger company put out lists of the developers that were being let go and what their skill sets are and stuff like that. So that was actually very helpful as well to find those people. Our CTO is actually Rich's brother, Basil, and we tried honestly for like 2 years to like get him to come on board and help out. And then finally, you get to the point where it's like, okay, well, you're big enough and you're actually doing good enough for me to like be more interested, because you're just a bit more stable, graduated to that next level. So that was very helpful. But that's been the most challenging part. So I think any informal networking, I would recommend that any physician, and I don't know what you think, Jordan, but having that technical co-founder is like, invaluable.
Yeah, more than invaluable even. Yeah, it's hard to even sum that up. Like, so Cherry's had 2 CTOs over the years here. So Max was the co-founder originally. Met him just friends of friends, kind of, literally just a personal connection. And then Mike, our latest CTO, same thing, friend of a friend. And so they kind of just like fell into place that way, just through having that personal contact. But I know there definitely are, and maybe this is a little bit better of an answer for the question from the audience there definitely are like technical people meetup networking events. Like I know here in Calgary, they meet up regularly. You can find these groups like just looking for like programmers and developers, and like there will usually be like a local group with like a newsletter and kind of like in the innovation scene and the hub, and like they do have meetups. And so definitely like if you're like kind of cold, don't know anybody, I would probably be going to those types of things, because like having a technical co-founder or person on the team is just, we wouldn't have gone anywhere without having a technical co-founder.
The only thing that I will add is if you yourself are not technical, it is going to be difficult to bring that first technical person onto the team. Like you said, it took a couple of years for you guys to get yours to finally say, okay, I'll join. But I would hazard a guess that as you were trying to choose other people, he would advise, and he would maybe help for non-technical people to help you pick technical resources or technical people to add to your team. So I think, sometimes it's easier early on to get someone who is a very trusted and seasoned and has built companies before. And it doesn't have to be within healthcare, as long as they're smart and they're savvy and they can pick up the gist of it. But having someone in your network who can help you evaluate technical resources and help you evaluate, who you bring on, or if you do decide to use a dev shop or anything like that, that is also invaluable before that key person might join the team, because it's something that we see sink a lot of early stage tech companies is unfortunately kind of choosing someone who's not as tech savvy as, or doesn't understand startup, or doesn't understand how to get a company to MVP as they could be. And it can be a big money suck, and it can be really damaging.
Yeah, 100%. That makes total sense. Like if you have a family or a friend or somebody who is, they're not like literally able or ready to jump ship from their job and join the team and be the CTO, if you can leverage that personal connection to help you vet or interview or kind of like narrow down your search for the CTO, like that would save you a lot of time and headache, so that nobody's misrepresenting.
It is a foreign language.
Yeah. Like
if really you can dupe someone.
That is like a huge point, right? Is people get duped all the time with contractor gigs, and just like way overcharging, and you don't know what you don't know as a physician, which is agreeing 100% with what you guys are saying. The other things too that came to mind, so you mentioned the local meetups or the groups like our hackathons.
Yep.
Was like Hacking Health, like that's a great place to go and meet some technical people.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the local meetup groups. And then just like any local incubators, like, you know, I knew in Waterloo there was Communitech, and we had one in Hamilton when I was living there. So those were invaluable places to meet. It's funny how you forget those challenges. Like you're like 3 years out and you're like, oh wait, like, oh yeah, we've come a long way from like randomly showing up to like a hackathon to try and find developers, you know?
It's quite a wild journey. And I think for many startups, it can be a make or break to just be able to get that expertise advising, and then eventually to join the organization. I know we're
another comment. Yeah. So this, so shout out to Jose Ramos there. So he submitted this as a question. So the other person asking about the CTO pieces wouldn't really see this, but Jose says to reach out to him. He's CTO from the health industry. I will send you his info connection after, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we'll make that connection between the two with Yolaine and Jose in an email afterwards to connect them. So that's awesome. Thanks, Jose. So I think we're about at that stage to wrap it up now. If there is any final word of wisdom or advice that you want to give to anyone in healthcare thinking about taking on the journey of entrepreneurship or starting up their own business, what would you say?
It's all about the people, right? It's all about the people that you surround yourself with, and just don't compromise on that. There are people like I worked in a bunch of. So I was the chief medical officer of another company that was publicly traded. I've done lots of consulting in US markets, and it's not like the money's not worth it and your time's not worth it if you don't connect with people. Like, so don't compromise on the people that you're bringing into this tight knit circle that you're going to be spending a lot of time with and taking a lot of risk with. You need to really be able to go through a lot together. And so it's all about the quality people, you know?
Amazing. Thank you. Jordan, any final thoughts, questions, or words of wisdom?
Yeah. Don't be afraid to just put yourself out there and shop things around in terms of ideas, you know, circulate things, you know, before you get started. Mock up a prototype. Before you mock up a prototype, ask people, you know, if there was a prototype, would this be useful? Try and figure out, you know, is there a path to actually launching things? So just like Rich was saying, you know, like, do you have a viable connection to a hospital to do a pilot test in, you know, otherwise, like, how difficult, you know, let's say you build your MVP, how, you know, what does that path look like to actually, you know, going from ideation to product to testing it and getting it out into the real world? And, you know, just make sure you're putting your effort somewhere where you're pretty sure there's the confident path forward there. And then, 100%, it's all about who you know and who you meet and putting together that team and having those resources.
Love it. Thanks, Jordan. Well, I'll wrap up with this, which is, again, just giving kudos to those who are already putting themselves out there and taking the journey to try and make an impact and make things better. And to those who are thinking about it and, trying to figure out how they can make the healthcare system better. I think we appreciate it, and we appreciate you all. Again, we're going to send out a follow-up from this session, thanking everyone who joined. And if you have any further topics, ideas, people you think would be great to have on the Cherry Lives, please let us know in the comments. And if you're not already on Cherry Health, you can join Cherry Health and connect with other physicians and other healthcare professionals there. And a great way to connect and start chatting too, if you've got questions or if you want to just get to know each other within the healthcare ecosystem. It's a good spot for that too. So I think we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us today. And until the next one.
Awesome. Thanks, Rich.
Thank you, guys.
Everyone.